what that does in the end, it gets people to value life, value relationships, and then all of this division, those lines start to fade.
I've always been struck, and I mean that in the most positive way, by people who discover their passion, the thing that really makes their eyes light up and their hearts beat, and then they make it their life's pursuit.
The reason why I love tea is because tea affords people to slow down. I love inviting people to my home, setting a delicious cup of tea in front of them, and we just chat.
Put countless hours in. I think Gladwell called it, 10,000 hours of practice. Finding a way to share it with the world and invite others in the journey. And that's my guest this week. Michael Don Ham is an extraordinary entrepreneur, but his roots was and still is never about making money. It's about his health and wellness and yours.
Human health is deteriorating. It's because of chemical farming. It's because of all the exposure to poisons in our air, in our foods. We have to set an example that there are other options for people who want to be healthy.
And he's built 2 successful businesses. So we're going to hear a great entrepreneurial story, one that not only changed his life, but thousands of others.
I believe that we can make a huge impact on people.
Hi, it's Tony Chapman. Thank you for listening to Chatter That Matters, presented by RBC. If you can, please subscribe to the podcast, and ratings and reviews, well, they're always welcome and they're always appreciated. Michael Don Ham, welcome to Chatter That Matters.
Thanks, Tony. I'm thrilled to be here today.
Michael, when we were talking before we did this interview, you mentioned the story about your first bank account. And of course, it was magic to my ears because it's RBC who sponsors my podcast. So
I remember my first bank account, my mom had to sign, and it was at RBC. And I was just so excited to be getting my first. I had a paper route, so I was making money. I had to put it in an account. My mom set it up for me, a joint account. And I was just like, I felt so much independence and strength and enablement at that moment.
So your parents moved from Korea to Canada. What motivated their move? What were they hoping to find? And do you feel that they found it?
I definitely feel that they found it. And growing up in Canada, especially being second generation, culture barriers, language barriers, a lot of immigrants will probably understand what I'm saying, but you don't really have a lot of dialogue with your parents because you grew up in a new society. There's a lot of cultural differences. As I grew into adulthood, I had a chance to talk a lot to my parents. Fortunately, my mom passed too early at 69, but every time I got on the phone with my dad, I asked him about why he went to Germany as a minor and then came to Canada. During the Korean War, the North Koreans were coming south and they went into his village. They were pretty much taking all able-bodied men and bringing them back to North Korea to fight. And actually in the beginning, they were prisoners, right? My dad told me that when the soldiers were coming, he just faked that he was disabled. He just fell to the ground, faked that he couldn't walk, and they just passed by him. So it was that split second of decision that I realized I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that split decision. So
you talked about him faking being disabled, but when I researched your story, you were incredibly able, an avid athlete. Sports was really a lot of how you defined who you were and maybe trying to find a place in this new society.
All my greatest memories are playing sports with my friends, my teammates, learning the lessons. We all know sports is one of the greatest environments to go through ups and downs, be disciplined, and fight for your fellow man, right? That's next to you. So I think a lot of that carries over to entrepreneurship. But yeah, I played until college hockey, played sports all my life. There's that commonality of the human spirit and being together. I think that's what symbolizes what sports is all about.
You also talk about that your dad's sort of entrepreneurial skills is something that also poured into you, helped you really define who you're going to be later in life.
I have 2 brothers, younger and older, but we hardly ever saw my dad. He would leave before we got up. He'd come home after we went to sleep. So extremely hard work. We saw that dedication and work ethic, but he didn't speak the language fluently. So I think he learned business intuitively. He was able to build many businesses, and we weren't like wealthy, but pretty comfortably. He just taught us through his work ethic and making right decisions, connecting with people, that you can make an impact on the community, take care of your family, and enjoy your work every day.
So you got to play college hockey, so clearly you didn't get to the show, the NHL, but you went to school and your passion for sports, I guess, was one of the reasons that you pursued a couple of degrees, which is really about the human body.
The summer after I graduated from high school, I had a chance to go back to my parents' native land, Korea. It was the first time since I was there since I was 10. It's just eye-opening, right? And during my stay there, I really appreciated the global camaraderie we all have as humans, right? It's not just the color of your skin, but we all have that common sense of humanity. And that's when it opened my eyes. I want to do something for the rest of my life that helps and impacts the human condition. And for me, because I grew up loving sports, it was movement. Being active, obviously, is very, very vital to health, and nutrition. What you eat, right?
And so you get this degree and then you come out and decide to teach high school for 2 years. What did you bring into the classroom? Was it this sort of passion for movement and nutrition, or was it also what you learned on the sports field that said maybe we can educate people a little differently and make it more of a team sport versus academia? I'm just curious.
I think what was invigorating for me, by the time I entered the teaching profession, I was in my mid-20s. I was teaching high school and my students were 5, 6, 7 years younger. And so I think I had a lot of great opportunities where you had that generational relationship. Whereas before, your teacher would be maybe 10, 20 years older. There'd be a little bit of a separation. I always had to toe the balance between like being too chummy and actually being a professional, making sure the curriculum was conveyed effectively. Teaching taught me a lot on how to deal with people, how to communicate effectively, and then lead by example was probably the biggest lesson I learned as a teacher.
Did you ever feel like an imposter? Because I have to believe going into the teacher's lounge, who's this young kid, and going into the classroom, I mean, did you ever wonder, how am I going to succeed here and empower these individuals that, at the same time, secretly wish I could go out on the sports field and play football with them?
It was intimidating in the beginning. Going into the staff room, they think you're a student, right? So you definitely have to earn your stripes, show professionalism, and then when they see you dedicated to the students, you just get into their good graces. I also taught English. I taught nutrition. At that time, it was called home ec. There were no male role models. You taught how to cook a nutritious meal. Everyone was a female teacher. So that was a very interesting dynamic as well. And the female teachers loved having a male.
And you go from teaching high school and the sort of the security and starting to get your currency with it. Then you decide to move to New York City and work for a non-for-profit. What motivated the move, and what were you searching for that you couldn't find in the classroom?
I don't know if I got it from my parents, because obviously to leave a country you grew up in to a foreign land in your 20s, 30s, thousands of miles away, there's no internet back then. So if you're leaving, you're pretty much leaving your family, right? And I don't know if that rubbed off on me, but even as much as I love teaching, during the summers I would travel, I would see a wider perspective. And I just felt like in my little after my mid-20s, this is the time before I, settle down to do something that I can experience the world. And that's what that nonprofit opportunity afforded me. I just made that bold decision just to leave Vancouver.
So not to use a sports metaphor, but a curveball comes your way a week after you set up in New York City, 9/11.
I just wanted to let you know I love you, and I'm stuck in this building in New York.
Oh my God. So both towers are now.
This nation is peaceful, but fierce when stirred to anger. And this unity against terror is now extending across the world.
I'd love to get your sense of it, because if I'm a New Yorker, what I saw on the news was such resilience and defiance that this is the Big Apple and nothing's going to take us down. This is where we live. This is who we are. I'm just curious, as somebody that's whose relationship with that city was 1 week old, did you think, what am I doing here and how fast can I get out? Or did you realize that this was just a moment in history that you were part of and you were going to continue to be part of?
My friends and family were concerned and they were like, hey, why don't you think about coming back? But I never had any of those thoughts. And even to this day, I just marvel at the human spirit. A few weeks after, it was the World Series and the Yankees were in the World Series, and President Bush came out and threw the first pitch, and just the whole crowd, it was just everyone coming together. We have so much division today, but during that time, everyone, whatever party you supported, you were all just a New Yorker, you were an American, you were fighting for democracy and humanity. I marveled at it, really, just coming from small town Canada, right? Simple life, coming to the big city and seeing all of that.
What was the non-for-profit? What were you doing there?
I grew up in a Christian family, and the nonprofit was a non-denominational, educational nonprofit that went around the world to educate on the wisdom and teachings of the Bible, as well as science, health, those types of matters. So I had a chance to travel all over the world, Latin America, Europe, Southeast Asia. It was just a very enriching experience.
I'm curious how the family, the brothers and your parents, thought about what you were doing, because they must have been very proud where you were a high school teacher, and then very sad that you moved away, the 9/11. Did they understand what you're doing and why it mattered to you?
In the beginning, it was tough. Even my mom was like, what are you doing? I don't support it. You should at least get some air under your wings, teach for at least a few more years. And then, of course, if you want to explore, I'd support it. But I just kept talking to them throughout the process, because I said, I'm not going to go. I want to go. I'm not going to go unless I get my parents' blessing. But after continual conversation on why I wanted to do it, they gave their blessing, thankfully.
So your persuasive skills didn't necessarily always come from the boardroom. It was just convincing your parents.
Yeah.
And then I can only imagine their expressions when you might have called home and said, I'm making another move on the chessboard. I'm now going to move to California and spend 5 years working on an organic farm.
At that time, I was married. I had a child. And so I think it's a little different when you just leave the home where you're under the protection of your parents to some degree. And then you chart out your own course with your own family. I think at that point, they were just like, he's just got to make his own decisions, and they're always supportive. So just very thankful for that.
Coming up, Michael's story shifts again, and this time to the worlds of tea. But it's not about profit. It's about helping all of us live a healthier and more sustainable life. Four years ago, we were blessed with our first grandchild. And from that moment, Maxwell Jude opened his eyes, while I began to see the world through his. I started wondering what planet Earth would offer. What kind of air would he breathe? What kind of food and water would sustain him? What kind of society would he inherit? And what kind of world would give him the chance not just to live, but to truly thrive? And that was the moment that Earth Day became more than a reminder. It became a reality, and a personal one. Because it's our responsibility to pass on a healthier planet and a healthier society to the next generation. And that's why I'm so proud about what RBC is doing with their purpose framework. Their ideas for people and planet. Not about banking or checking accounts or wealth management. It's about helping clients thrive and communities prosper. Turning ideas into action for people, communities, and the planet. Because a healthier planet and a better tomorrow matters to you, to me, to Maxwell Jude, and to RBC.
The need to feed them cheaply, need to feed the population cheaply, was really the advent of industrial agriculture, and then chemical agriculture using pesticides, herbicides, actually destroying the soil for the purpose of more production, faster production, cheaper production. It's done a lot of harm to our planet, and we're paying the consequences today.
Today, my very special guest is Michael Don Ham. He's a regenerative tea farmer who truly believes in a higher purpose than simply making a profit. And one of the notes that I love about your story is this curiosity and exploring cultures. And we've already raised the concept of one human race more than once. And where we're going to take the story now actually began 20 years earlier when you went to South Korea and you visited a 1,000-acre tea farm. As a young kid, did it open your eyes? Did you see possibilities? Or was it just, that's a beautiful farm and have some tea and what's next on my trip?
I did not see the possibilities, especially what it has turned into today. But today it's 1,000 acres. Back then it was probably a few hundred acres. They planted the seeds in 1999. I was there a few years after that. So it's still very early stages. But what struck me was it was totally out of the box. Because if you think about a farm, you draw up a business plan. You're like, we're going to plant this. It's going to take X amount of years to grow. This is how much we can command on the market. So you cash flow it or you forecast it and you have a very proper business plan. You get the investors. They were just like, we want to create the highest quality teas. We want to farm it in a way that it was done in ancient times, the way nature designed it. Whatever hardships come, we're just going to battle through it. I was just amazed at that mindset at that early stage that I saw.
Was that mindset, I mean, I often see that in the wine industry, that somebody's made a lot of wealth and decides they want to own a vineyard, but not really know what they're doing? Or is this mindset truly within the spirit of these owners that said, let's get back to the way nature intended us to grow things?
Well, I had a chance to interview or, meet and talk to the visionaries of the farm. And I just asked, what's the purpose of doing it like this? Because it's not easy, right? I was just amazed at the fortitude and the strength of mind to say that human health is deteriorating. It's because of chemical farming. It's because of all the exposure to poisons in our air, in our foods. And we have to set an example that there are other options for people who want to be healthy, to access nutrient-dense foods, to know exactly how their food is grown. Because the fact is, even today, if I ask you, Tony, or anyone in the audience, if you go to the grocery store, look in your basket. Do you know how that food was grown?
It's so true. And it's a big part of what I'm doing this year. Is one of the themes of my podcast is longevity. You are what you eat. You are where you live. And that's really why I was so excited to talk to you, because 5 years ago, you reconnect with that visionary and you co-found Wild Orchard Teas. What gave you the courage to do that? Because there's a lot of people who dream of doing something with their life, being in control of their life, but it's not an easy gauntlet.
About 5 to 6 years ago, my co-founder, who is actually the son of the visionary of the farm, so he pretty much, we're talking and he's like, it's 1,000 acres now. And the farmers are not business people. They're good at their craft. The original vision of the farm was to bring it to 1,000 acres and then share the tea with the world. Allow people to live healthier lifestyles, right? I didn't hesitate. I was drinking the tea for the last 20 years. I wasn't an avid tea drinker. To be honest, I would drink maybe once a month, once every few weeks. But once we decided to start in 2019, I told myself, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it properly. Ever since then, I've been drinking 2 liters a day of tea. I've never missed a day of work. I have more energy than I had when I was in my 30s.
Clearly, that's your point of difference. But a lot of people listening, they have to realize that you're not the only song in town. I mean, the tea category is very crowded. Getting very processed. A lot of major multinational firms are going, I'll slap the word tea on because it has a higher efficacy note than maybe a soft drink. What are you doing with Wild Orchard Tea to stand for and stand out in a way that there's other Michaels that are out there that's saying, part of who I am is consuming this product, not only just for immediate gratification, but for what it's doing for my body?
To be successful, and successful can mean many things, is to show that this model, which we think should be the model for tea, people look at it and they say, we want to do it like that because it's the right way to do it. So it goes back to, do you know how and where your tea was grown? Our teas are directly from one farm. So whether we do social media or marketing, we can always talk to the farmers about the farmers and why they did what they did for the last 25 years. So that's the story there. The problem is when we go to the retail shelf and we see all of these tea brands, great businesses, really brilliant minds, great marketing. But once again, if you break down how that tea has come to that shelf, it's being sourced from multiple farms. So you don't really know how it was grown. It's being auctioned. It's being exported. It's being imported. There's a broker, there's a distributor, and a retailer. So everyone in the middle is making a cut of the pie. And usually the farmer gets the short end of the stick. And if we're going to fix the nutrient density issue, the environmental issue, or impact caused by farming, we have to really put more value on the farm and the farmer. And that's what we're trying to do.
As you're moving forward on this and you're succeeding with it, another entrepreneurial bug bites you. And this time you realize that it's not just what we consume, but where we live also matters. And you formed this company called Repure. I'd love you to tell us what that's all about. And then we're going to spend some time talking about what you're all about going forward.
We talked about you are what you eat. We are what we breathe too. And let me put that into context. So on an average day, we consume about 2 pounds of food, 4 pounds of liquids, 26 pounds of air. The difference between good quality air that we breathe in and bad, over time, it compounds. And because we're breathing so much of it, 20,000 breaths a day, 2,000 gallons a day, it's enough to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool. So if the air is good and then another person is breathing bad air, you extrapolate that over weeks, months, years, it's going to have a tremendous impact. And the science shows that breathing bad air will reduce 1 to 2 years of your life. Repure is about automating clean indoor air within your home and office space. You know the air quality, you know the difference between what it's like outside, and whenever it goes out of the green zone, everything kicks on the purification systems to bring it back into the green. So it's almost like a thermostat to keep you comfortable. Our system is to keep the air quality pristine.
And Michael, how do you answer the critics that say you're just jumping onto these trends because they're in vogue and you're trying to make a lot of money with them, and answer them saying, yeah, profit's important, but having a higher purpose is what drives me?
Yeah, these are definitely trending industries because more and more people are concerned about health and wellness. But I think how you differentiate between people who are just looking to make a buck and leveraging and trying to ride the wave is really what is the solution that's being offered and how does it stack up with the science. I think discerning consumers really look at those factors. And so, sure, as a business, you have to be profitable. You have to be able to allow your employees to make a livelihood and follow their passion. But for us, we've been doing this a long time. I'll be happy if I can just pay my bills and keep making an impact. To me, it's not like you got to make millions and that's a success. It's more about how is what we're providing, a solution or a service, impacting the community and the greater community.
And how about you as an individual? Because you strike me as a wanderer, someone that's wandered into different areas, explored, put things into your knapsack and moved on. And each time, you collected a sense of wisdom. And my grandmother would have said an old soul. How do you stay in the moment and present? Because that's what a CEO needs to do. And also answer this calling that you have to say, what else is out there? Or have you found such peace with what you're doing, you no longer have that calling?
I really believe for the rest of my life, how many years that will be, it's really going to be dedicated to the tea project. Because one thing I recall vividly is when I decided to go to a major trade show in 2020 March, I had meetings lined up. I had all our samples, and we were meeting all the top retailers that we wanted listed and wanted to get into. And 6 hours after I landed, they canceled the whole show because of COVID. Pretty much the world shut down. So for 2 years, we didn't, retailers were not looking at us. They were not interested in new brands. It was a struggle for survival. But during that whole time, I still remember vividly the one thing that came up in our minds: the farm did this for 20 years. If we give up now, we would be doing a huge disservice to the farmers. We made a promise that we're going to uplift and spread the word about the farm and introduce the products to people all over the world. And we just gutted it out. It was tough.
Michael, we're having a sidebar conversation. I think your idea of pace and capitalism is something that really deserves to be shared. So why don't you tell my audience what we were talking about when we were chatting about partners and growth and expectations?
Running a business, of course, capital is extremely vital to sustain a business, grow a business. You use that to grow your business, to expand your team. But the people that I've spoken to, fellow founders of brands, it's just, we're trying to do something good in the world. And then if the investor comes in and says, we want you to do this, use the money for this growth, it doesn't align, because investment, for the most part, there are some very intuitive, humanistic investors that want to do the right thing. But the majority of investment is all about quick returns, quick growth, right? And for the tea company, all of my colleagues, my co-founder, we set out to build a multi-generational business so that the younger generation, people who are interested in impacting the human condition positively, they have a place to come to. The world we live in today is just too fast. When I grew up, Tony, when you grew up, we would just play out in nature, play with our friends. Time slowed down. We enjoyed those precious moments. But today, I feel so bad for the young generation because they are just stuck to their devices. They don't get to experience what we experienced as children, the joys. The reason why I love tea is because tea affords people to slow down. I love inviting people to my home, setting a delicious cup of tea in front of them, and we just chat for hours. And I think we need more of that in this world, to connect with people, to uplift people, help people live healthier. And then what that does in the end, it gets people to value life, value relationships. And then all of this division we spoke about earlier, those lines start to fade. That's why I believe I'll be doing tea for the rest of my life. I believe that we can make a huge impact on people.
Michael, I always end my interviews with my 3 takeaways. And the first one is, I'm envious you were part of the world where George Bush threw out that pitch and we were one human race fighting for democracy, and we'd left our partisan biases behind, and we said, this is what matters most. I think the world is so in desperate need of this connective tissue, and hopefully we don't need a tragedy to find it. The second thing is that you're such a great storyteller. A lesson for everybody out there is when you find ways to describe things like pounds of air versus the pounds of water we take, people realize that this is something they can personalize. And this is something they can pursue as an individual. And it's a great lesson in life for people in terms of really getting across your passion, because not everybody will immediately get it or understand it or embrace it. But if you can tell it in the right kind of story, by personalize it, they take it personally. And then the last thing that I just really enjoy is, if the farmers did it for 20 years, we're going to do a disservice if we left them down. The true measure of great leaders going forward, they're not the hero. The shareholders aren't the ones that they're serving, that there's a bigger cause and a higher purpose in life. And if you continue to focus on that, even though you might not create the returns on capital that people immediately want, what I think you do is you create a return on humanity. For that, there's not a greater return. That's something that you'll be measured by, and the world will measure you by for decades to come. So for all of that and more, Michael Donham, I'm just an absolute pleasure to have you on Chat That Matters.
To be able to have this sort of platform to reach other people, share our story, I really want to show my gratitude to you. It's been a pleasure, Tony.
Once again, a special thanks to RBC for supporting Chat That Matters. It's Tony Chapman. Thanks for listening, and let's chat soon.